guys, it's Layla Shaver, your favorite compliance nerd, and I'm here to talk to you today about buying a book of business. Yes, it is the next sexy thing out there for advisors to do. The M&A market is going crazy, records being hit every year. So much consolidation happening in their industry. But you may be starting to consider, should I start buying books of business? For me, acquiring another advisor's book of business is a great way to grow your business and grow it quickly. But it's often a very intricate and complicated process, and it's something that you have to be well informed about so you don't face issues later, and hopefully not a situation where you're having to go to court or arbitration to enforce your rights. So let's talk about what it takes to buy a book of business. First, valuation. When you are looking at a book of business, you want to understand the value of that book of business. There's different ways to value a book, right? You can look at the revenue and determine an appropriate multiplier times, let's say, the last 12 months of revenue. You can look at profitability. You could look at EBITDA for your valuation, right? So applying a multiple to the profitability of the business, pre-expenses, all that fun stuff. You also want to look at the fees. Is this business charging higher fees, lower fees? Is this someone who's charging like 50 basis points? Or are they charging 2%? AUM could be another way. Your AUM fees could be another way that you value a book of business. And finally, look at the actual book. What are the types of clients involved? What are the types of services they're receiving? It is different if you are buying a book of business from an advisor whose business is mostly transactional and one-off. That means you have to replace that revenue every year. But if the book of business is made up of clients that are using the advisor for asset management and having clients for many years, that's going to be a better value. You're not having to replace that revenue. Your revenue's there. You're just building and growing and replacing anyone that leaves. So a book of business that's mostly comprised of one-off transactions versus a book of business that's comprised of ongoing asset management, those are going to have different values. But you also want to look at other makeup considerations. So what are the average age of the clients? What are the types of services that are being offered? What's their socioeconomic level? Is it consistent with your own book of business? The needs of a mom and pop business owner is going to be different from the needs of a ultra high net worth investor. Does that fit with the services you currently offer through your own firm? So look at the actual makeup of the book of business. Look at the actual clients. Look at the actual services being provided. That will help you determine a value to that book of business. Second area you should consider when you're thinking about buying a book of business, and this is one I am going to harp on because I can't believe how often people skip this step. Due diligence. Can we say that together? Due diligence. Know what the hell you're buying and who the hell you're buying it from. So we kind of talked about book of business and valuation. Client data. Let's look at it. Let's look at who our clients are. How old are they? I know an advisor recently bought a book of business and all the clients were old as hell. They're all about to die. And the advisor who sold the book hadn't done anything to keep the business in the firm. He didn't reach out to the children and grandchildren of his clients, talk to them, engage them, have them become clients of the firm so the assets would stay and grow with the firm. Look at the client data, guys. Look who's the client. Look at what services they're getting. Look at the fees they're paying. Look at how long they've been clients. Look at their age. Look at their marital status. Look at their employment status. Look at the strategy. Look at the client data, guys. Look. You also want to look at revenue sources. Is revenue coming from insurance? Is it coming from advisory? Is it coming from financial planning? Is it a subscription service? Is it ongoing asset management? Is it a one-off plan? Is it an ongoing financial planning service? What are the revenue services in this business? And a revenue source doesn't come from an outside business activity. It's an outside business activity. So if most of the revenue is through insurance and it's someone who is appointed as an insurance agent directly with the firm, you're not getting that. If they're doing it through a separate insurance agency, you're not buying the insurance agency. You're looking at the book of business on the advisory side. So look at the revenue sources for the business. You know where I'm going next. You know where I'm going next. Compliance. Yes, compliance. Look at compliance. Look at, have there been any lawsuits, arbitrations, client complaints? Have they been keeping up with their compliance responsibilities, right? If you find out after you bought this book of business that the clients had been overcharged for the last 3 years, do you know who's probably going to have to pay back that overcharge? Probably you. Unless, of course, you get a great attorney who makes sure you're protected during the acquisition process. But look at this information. Look at the compliance folder. Request a schedule of their testing. Look at their last exam deficiency letter. What were the deficiencies noted? Were they like little piddly things, or was it something more substantive? You don't want to take on a bunch of risk. You don't want to take on a bunch of disgruntled clients if you know that the compliance has been poorly maintained and there have been a lot of unhappy people. So make sure you're looking at the compliance exception log, look at their compliance folder, just get an idea for their compliance program and culture. Let's talk about technology, right? So many of you are like, I'm just buying the book of business. I'm not buying the rest of the business. Yes, but let's think about where all that information is stored, right? How much more work is it going to be for you to pull that information off of their tech stack and repackaging it to fit into your tech stack? It is a consideration because there is time and cost associated with pulling data from one place, reconfiguring it, and putting it into your system. And oftentimes, depending on the size of the acquisition, this process can take months and it can be expensive. So review the technology stack that the firm's data is logged in and really identify whether it's going to be an easy transition to get that data when you buy the book of business. Now, we've talked about the due diligence, we've talked about valuation. Let's talk about what happens once you start this process of buying the book of business and afterwards. So you really need to think about compliance on a moving forward basis as well. So what the hell do I mean? Well, if you're buying this book of business, what notifications do we send to clients? Are we able to take on the contract? Do we have to notify them that, hey, I'm taking over your contract, you have to give me approval to do so, or if I don't hear from you, I'm going to be taking it over. What are the client notifications you have to make? Have you thought about transition planning? How to get them from this advisor's custodian to yours? What's all the paperwork that needs to be completed? What are the documentation information the custodian needs? Have you thought about any privacy law implications with taking personally identifiable information from this person and bringing it into your business? Have you looked at your Form ADV? Have you looked at your policies and procedures? Do anything need to be changed as a result of this acquisition? Look at your licensing and registration. If you've bought this book of business and you have clients in states in which you're not registered in as an advisor, or your firm's not registered or notice filed in, you got some work ahead of you. And finally, let's look at suitability and fiduciary duty. What is your responsibility to these clients? What is the requirement to do what's in their best interest? I talked about this a little before. When you're looking at a book of business for purchase, do the client's needs match what your firm currently provides? Are their investment objectives aligned with how you work with clients? When there is a mismatch between their needs and what you do, those clients don't stay. So you want to make sure there's an alignment between your firm and the services and how you work with clients and what this book of business is used to. What are their needs and the services they've been receiving? And that includes considering fees. Are the fees consistent or similar? Can you justify an increase? Are they getting more service, more people to access, more operational access? What is the basis for the increased fees? And these are all things that go into your fiduciary duty as an advisor. Is this in the best interest of the client? Are your strategies and model portfolios suitable for this client? Something to consider. All right, let's talk about client relationships. So we've gone through, we've bought the book, we've done the compliance analysis, we determined, yes, it's going to be a good fit. These clients are going to be like, yay, random person. I'm so excited to just open up about myself and give you all of my personal details and information. No, you've got to build these client relationships. You've got to earn that trust. You've got to work with them. Oftentimes that means working out a deal with their former advisor so that they can come along for a short term and make them feel comfortable with you. Do a handoff, right? You need to build these relationships. You need to have communications with them. You need to identify what they liked about their advisor, maybe what they'd like to see with you. Ask them to bring on their adult children. Ask them to bring on their relatives. Identify other areas in which you can support them. But it's really important to focus on this client relationship and building it and creating a healthy, good one between you and that new client. When we're talking about client relationships, that means you need to have a plan. Have a plan as soon as you're transitioning your clients, that you are communicating with them frequently. They need to see you. They need to hear you. They need to talk to you. They need to get comfortable with your processes and the people that are on your team. So make sure you have a plan in place. This is not a shoot from the hip, I'll figure it out later kind of scenario. These clients will leave. And if it's not the fault of the seller that they left, then you're stuck. So you want to make sure you have a plan to keep these relationships. You just paid a lot of money for this book of business. Now keep it. Now let's talk about post-acquisition. Metrics, guys, metrics. Identify how many clients you brought on. Identify the AUM and check in periodically, monthly, quarterly. Look at how the assets are growing, looking at how many clients are actually continuing to stay monthly or quarterly after the acquisition. Look at how many people are leaving. Follow what people are leaving. Get feedback. Why are you leaving? Is it just because they've decided, well, I wasn't really a fan of my other advisor, and now that he sold the book of business to you, I'm just going to take this opportunity to look somewhere else, right? Just because someone is thinking about leaving doesn't mean the mind is made up. So keep those lines of communication open and make sure you're tracking key metrics to identify opportunities to improve, to increase assets under management, but also to mitigate potential client loss. So I know this is a lot that I've covered in terms of how to identify the book of business, what you should do to make sure this is a book of business you want to buy, how to keep your clients that you've just bought post-acquisition, and how to make sure they stay happy for years to come. These relationships are super important. You've undertaken this entire process so that you can grow your business and ultimately help more people. So be smart about it. Go in with a plan. And hopefully when you finally decide to take that leap and buy an advisor's book of business, it'll be a great experience for you. And in the meantime, if you're looking for additional support, you can always give us a call at MyRA Lawyer, 770-462-2118. Look forward to speaking with you.